Hey folks, Kilt-Man here. Kilt-Man at your services. How are you all? I hope you're all doing very, very well. It is a Freedom Friday, which of course is a day of celebration for me. It means plentiful amounts of this stuff. He says with a subtle irony because there's anything but plentiful amounts of this stuff in the Kilt Mansion right now. And this will not last long because this is going to go down my neck in tribute and in celebration and in salute to the great Hollywood legend that is Donald Sutherland. This is Kilt-Man's tribute to the great Donald. One of my favourite actors ever. One of the best actors ever. With a phenomenal range and a longevity as well. He was born in 1935 in New Brunswick in Canada. He died yesterday, June 20th, 2024, at the age of 88. I think he was just a month shy of his 89th birthday, but he died in Miami. And what a shocker it was. You genuinely think these people will last forever. And I'll just say about when the news broke for me, I was watching the England match. Yes, I know. Against Denmark in the Euros, and I was in the pubs in the cask, and it was lacklustre, it was boring, and I don't follow England anyway because I support Scotland, and the less said about that the better, but half time I thought, I've had enough of this. In fact, it was just before half time. I went back home and Mrs. Kilt-Man was sat on one side, my son was sitting on the other side, I was in the middle. The dog was somewhere around, my daughter was elsewhere in the house, and the match resumed after half time. And suddenly, Mrs. Kilt-Man, who doesn't normally have any reaction in a major dramatic sort of way, she went, "Oh my God, Donald Sutherland has died." And I kid you not, because normally I know these things before anybody else, because I've got my phone glued to my hand and I'm on the cusp of everything. But my phone was on charge. I was here, as it happens, just over there. And I was in the movie room. Oh my God, Donald Sutherland's died. And I kid you not, I was on the settee and I had literally a spasm. I jerked forward and I went, "Oh my God, no." And I was like, "Oh my God, no." And my son on this side, he went, "I was just going to tell you the same thing," because it flashed up on their phones at the same time. Like, I was just going to tell you that. And I was just like, I literally physically felt it. Now, I've done a lot of these tributes to stars and celebrities that I've loved all my life and revered. But I don't think a single one of those has had the impact that this one did, which was involuntary and literally made me leap out of my seat and hold my head. And I gathered my senses, ran out here, got my phone to confirm. I didn't believe them, to confirm. And of course, there it was. And folks, it really, really hurt me. And I didn't know that he'd been ill. Apparently he'd been suffering from an illness for a long time. But the guy had been working almost consistently. There's never been a year that he wasn't making movies. Not been a year. He hasn't done something. And I was just like, these guys, they're eternal. They're immortal. How can they die? How dare they die? I can't imagine a world without Donald Sutherland. And the good thing is that we're not without him. A legacy of so many, many movies and legendary performances. He'll never die. That's the thing. So this is Kilt-Man's wee tribute to a truly phenomenal actor with such a huge range of characters. I mean, this guy could play the hero, the leading man, the goofball, Oddball, of course, from Kelly's Heroes, who regular viewers know, one of my favourite characters ever, and also I think my favourite character that Donald's ever played. And it's one of his earliest ones as well. But every film he was in, even if he's only like doing a cameo appearance, he would own it with sheer magnetism and pure charisma. That face, that voice, those eyes, those huge eyes. he could play a villain, as I say, but the gift he had of playing a villain was that you sympathised and you could be suckered in by him as a villain. Look at Lock Up, look at, oh God, Backdraft, look at so many movies where he's been on the other side of the fence. And this is a guy you can't trust, but those eyes, they could be cunning, they could be severe, Machiavellian, which helped him with a lot of Shakespearean stuff in his early days. But also, you would warm to those eyes, and he used that, he exploited that. But anyway, so he trained as an engineer and swiftly decided, this ain't for me. And took himself off to London to study at a drama school in London. Passed all that, learnt the ropes, and then took himself off to Scotland. Aye, bonny Scotland. And was in a repertory company up there, doing all sorts of plays, trading the boards for a good couple of years. Then he drifted into doing TV, English, British TV. And I think, I could be wrong in this, but I think he was doing an episode of The Saints with Roger Moore. And a rough cut of that was shown to Robert Aldrich. And Robert Aldrich went, I like that guy, send him over. Because I'm making a film in England right now called The Dirty Dozen. So, Pinkley was born. What kind of general do you want to be? I'd rather be a civilian, sir. The Dirty Dozen was born. And even though it's a rich ensemble movie, and Donald Sutherland would make a thing of being in ensemble movies quite a lot of the time, but he would be unique and eccentric and bizarre, and so obvious enough to stick in your mind and become one of the most memorable characters in an ensemble film. The Dirty Dozen bled into Kelly's Heroes, of course. And Kelly's Hero, I've done a massive review and celebration of Kelly's Heroes. I'll maybe put the link to that, and because I'm not going to talk too much about that right now, because I've done it all before. And as you can see, my young protege, Mr. Kentucky Fudge, has bedecked himself as Oddball, the lunatic hippie maverick tank commander from Kelly's Heroes, essayed perfectly by Donald Sutherland. Totally anachronistic. This is for World War II. He's pure Vietnam. And that's an interesting thing, because Donald Sutherland was very against America's involvement in Vietnam. And he and Jane Fonda were activists against, very pro and volatile against the campaign in Southeast Asia. And they even took themselves out there and performed outside US bases in sketches, and made a couple of movies about it as well. And of course, after Kelly's Heroes, what would he go and do? He would do the film Clute. The paranoid missing person, is it you? Is it a setup? I've got to follow this hooker, played by Jane Fonda, and he plays the detective Clute, who's a family friend of the missing person. And and they get it on. And they get it on off camera as well. Now, he was married several times, Donald Sutherland, and he was married at this time. And he had an affair lasting 2 years with Jane Fonda. And Jane Fonda was married then as well. Was she married to Roger Vadim at that time? I can't quite remember, but the two had an affair, and it was pretty much well known as well. And but they got on so great. She's paid a great tribute to him, as have many people. Many celebrities have sent their tributes in, and it's been all over TV. So, and it's, you know, it's obvious. I know they're going to do this. They all say pretty much the same thing, but they've worked with him. I've never worked with the guy, obviously. I've just, from an early age, known that guy with the big googly eyes and that magnetic personality. Whether good guy, bad guy, whatever, I like him. I'm drawn to this guy. And then you follow his career throughout your life, and certainly, well, all of his life, and many diverse roles that he's had. So, of course, after Clute, you get Nick Rogue's Don't Look Now. Wow, what a film that is, because it's a film about predestination, fate, destiny, precognition, and right from the word go, when they lose their daughter Christina in the pond outside their country mansion, it's Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie. I think he plays John Baxter, and he's just been recruited to restore a chapel in Venice, and he can do old paintings, he can do buildings, and he's got pictures from it. And this is the opening scene, and you've got a picture, and it's like a red hooded figure sitting there, and he's looking at that. His daughter's out playing, his son's out on a bike, his son rides over some broken glass, punctures his tyre, but something's going to happen. You know it's going to happen. And he looks at this, I think he drips red wine on it, and the wine leaks from the red cowled figure across the image of the stained glass window that he's got to restore. And he's looking at that, he looks up and realises precognition, something's happening. Legs are out the house, and of course his daughter's got into the pond to retrieve her teddy bear or something. And Donald Sutherland, in one of several key pivotal moments in his career which really break your heart into, leaps into the pond and drags out the drowned body of his daughter and elicits such a howl of anguish. Now, at the time, he on his second marriage now, and he had Kiefer Sutherland, and he had a daughter as well. So obviously he knew, the loss of a child, and you haven't got to have a child to understand what the pain of that might be like, but it's acutely even more, flashpoint if you have got a child, and he clearly worked on that, and he gives this howl, and it's the look on his face. It's just, and the rest of the film is about their grief. The son stays at boarding school in the UK. They go off to Venice, but things don't really happen out too well. There's a serial killer at large in Venice, and Donald Sutherland, keeps seeing him, this fleeting figure, small figure in red, which disappearing down the streets and all that. Bodies are being fished out the canals, and they meet these two aged sisters, psychic sisters, who basically say, look, you're in trouble, something's going to happen to you. He sees his own wife on a floating a gondola, which is a funeral cortege, and he's like, but she's meant to be at home because the son has an accident at home, and she goes out, but I've just seen her here, and there's a police investigation. Anyway, look, you guys know what the film is, and it's all about predestination. He's heading towards his own death, and his death at the hands of a little hideous dwarf dressed in a red coat with a hood up, which reminds him of his daughter. And when he finally traces it and tracks it down, and he's calling to it, like he thinks he's got an epiphany, she's back, and it turns around and it's just this hideous thing, and it pulls out a meat cleaver and takes him out in the neck, in the jugular, and his blood will pour down across the stained glass window that he was meant to be fixing. What you saw right at the start of the movie. His dying convulsions there are pretty effective as well. The film is infamous for the guy did cause controversy. The affair with Jane Fonda, obviously, his anti-Vietnam stance, and they have a sex scene, he and Julie Christie, and it's is it live or is it Memorex? Very notorious for being very realistic, and also they're doing it, aren't they? They're really doing it, aren't they? Well, anyway. And the thing about that sequence, that entire sequence, it's improvised. It wasn't scripted that way. But Nick Rogue saw how the Julie Christie and Donald Sutherland had a bit of banter after one scene ended, and he thought, hang on a minute, that's how people really speak to each other. Let's use that sequence and let's redo the scene I've just done. And how would it transpire? Because they're grieving, and it's how they come to terms with the grief and the loss of a child. And there'll be moments where they're going to be bonding, and that bonding becomes the sex scene, the infamous sex scene. The film is magnificent. Julie Christie is extraordinary in it as well, but it's Donald Sutherland's movie by far. And he would do this time and time again. A lot of sort of espionage thrillers, The Eagle Has Landed and Eye of the Needle, where Eagle Has Landed, based on a Jack Higgins novel. He plays a German agent who's up in the, I don't know what, the Inner Hebrides, I think they're on, and I think it's, I don't know, Shark Island or Storm Island, I think it's called. And no, hang on a minute, that's the Eye of the Needle. Sorry, Eye of the Needle, where he plays a German agent, and but he falls in love as well, and we know he's a bad guy, and he's all he's got to do is it's about the information of D-Day, the D-Day landings, and he's got to get to a German sub with the information. But he's fallen in love, and the poor girl has to kill him in the end. But it's a great movie. It's a romance, it's a drama, it's a bit of a thriller. But that's the Eye of the Needle. But Eagle Has Landed with Michael Caine is a great movie. That's the Jack Higgins one. That's German commandos take over a British country village. The idea is to assassinate Churchill. And, but Donald Sutherland plays an IRA man who's working with them. And again, this is what I'm saying. He's a bad guy like in Eye of the Needle, but you fall under his charms. You fall for him because he's so magnetic. And those eyes, those great big limpid blue eyes, they're entrancing. You will fall under his spell. So even he's great at playing a villain because the shades of villainy, obviously in some of the movies, he's pure out and out villain. In the great 80s Lock Up with Stallone, which I love, it doesn't get the love it deserves. I think it's tremendous. And you've got Sonny Landham's in there as well. Oh, it's great. And the great John Amos is in there as well. But Donald Sutherland plays this sadistic warden who hates Stallone, who's in there, kind of like, it's a crime that everyone knows he shouldn't have been charged with this. And he's in a nice prison, everything's great. But to get out to go and see this old guy that he loves, he escapes. But that's a prison that Donald Sutherland first had as warden, Dromgoole, I think his name is. And he's always wanted revenge on Frank Leone, that's the Stallone character, Leone. And so on the eve of him being released from prison, in the middle of the night, he gets transferred to a high security prison, which is run now by Dromgoole. And Dromgoole makes his life hell, kills his friends and sets him up for all sorts, threatens his wife or his girlfriend with rape, and does all sorts of horrible, heinous things. And in the end, trying to break Leone. And Leone, in the end, okay, you want me, you got me. You want me, you got me. And he will do a lot of stuff, a lot of action. And he manages to get Donald Sutherland into the electric chair as well. Just when all the riot police turn up and they smash the glass through and they're all there with the guns on him. But what Leone's done, he's taped his hand to the lever. And Donald Sutherland's sitting there, and he's with short hair now, not the big curly bonds he had in the 70s. He's sitting there with short grey hair and a fantastic moustache. And he's no, Leone, don't do it, Leone, don't kill me, please, I'm begging you, Frank, we can talk this through. Mr. Mesner, that's to Frank Amos, the main warden, and he's yeah, Mr. Mesner, don't fire, hold your fire, don't fire, please. And Stallone says what he's done, how he set him up and all that, and they're this can't be true. And but they shoot him, his hand will drop and pull the lever. So Donald Sutherland's sitting there doing a perfect characterization of a guy who's shitting himself, good style. And then he confesses everything. Yes, Mr. Mesner, I set him up. Everything he said is true. I set him up. I did all those things. And He goes, Stallone's like, well, jury's in. The verdict is guilty. I'm like, but I've confessed. No, pulls the lever, and Donald Sutherland does this great as he's being electrocuted. Only he's not being electrocuted. And he goes, turns around, and Stallone goes, flips open the generator housing, and says it works better with this, because he's took the fuse out already, and none of us knew that. But they've got the confession from him, and Donald Sutherland has to go like, right, get me out of here, uncuff him, cuff him, send him to the hole, and they're like, and John Amos is going like, it's like, you're insane, and he goes like, what do you mean? Cuff the warden. What are you doing? What are you doing? You just confessed, This will go to a judicial inquiry, and I take the warden to the hole and put him into custody. And like Donald Sutherland's going like, I'll have your ass for this. I'll have your ass. He's extraordinary, because he owns the bad guy role again in that movie, and yet he's funny at the same time. In later years, it'd be the Hunger Games, a recurring role in the Hunger Games. I cannot talk about that because I haven't seen any of them, not one. But I've seen clips of him with the white hair and the white beard, and isn't it because he wants kids to rebel as well? Oh no, we won't play that yet. That's from Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Philip Kaufman's 1978 fantastic film. Again, another one I've reviewed big time, and it's an ensemble cast, but again, it's Donald's movie. Where's it going with that? Let's backtrack, lock up. Hunger Games, yeah, because I've seen interviews with him as well when he said like, look, I think the Hunger Games is a good idea, the story, because I want kids to challenge what the authority is all about, governments, systems, bureaucracy, question it, and be rebellious, because he certainly was. You duck out of a trade like engineering to become an actor, and then you find a voice through other characters, which is a brilliant way of making a statement against the world. Well, you want to pick and choose your roles. Well, that I agree with what that guy's saying, so I'll play him. Or I'll play someone who's completely opposite from my personality to get a perspective on the other way of life, the other way of thinking. And that's the kind of actor that he was. He'd explore and he'd ask questions about the characters. He was very, very intelligent. He knew his wines, he knew paintings, he knew artwork, he knew a lot about a lot. But again, he probably got a lot of that by playing these characters and investing himself in these roles. Well, this person's into so and so. Like again, John Baxter in Don't Look Now, a restorer of fine arts and stained glass windows and grade 1 listed buildings. So he would have done his research into that. I've got to get a mindset as to how this guy thinks, and I love that. That's how you should approach these things. A lot of roles should be fun, and you just heard the music there from the first great train robbery. In fact, I'll play one of the best bits of music from Jerry Goldsmith, where he starred alongside Sean Connery, and it is a Victorian crime caper. It's fun, although there's some sinister moments in it. There's a really frightening scene with a pursuing murderer in the foggy streets of an old London town, and but these two in their top hats. It's magnificent. How to get the gold from this train, this high-speed locomotive, and it's a great caper, and the great banter repartee between him and Sean Connery, and it shows you like this would be what 70? Does it say? I don't know. 77, 78, something like that. Again, he was very prolific throughout the 70s. Was old Mr. Sutherland, and acting against a lot of great names as well. And in ensemble cast, as I said before, I think that was probably a great grounding for him to work opposite the likes of Charles Bronson, Telly Savalas, Clint Eastwood, right from the word go, you know, Don Rickles, to have that basis, watch how they do things, pick up their stuff, but also have his own, you know, attitude, which really worked because he stood out from all the rest of them. You've got to put down the directors as well, not put them down, but, you know, big them up in fact, because they could pick people like that could work together and yet still shine as beacons in their own right and be memorable. You don't want people to blend into the background, you know. As usual, again, Donald. There's a bit of a Mandela effect with this movie because the first great train robbery, that's how I remember it, the first great train robbery. But many people know it purely as the Great Train Robbery. And there are posters that say the Great Train Robbery. And yet, I don't know it as that. And it's listed here as, just out of interest, because I want to check myself. I've got the complete Jerry Goldsmith score. I'm going off on a tangent, I know, but I always do that. Where's it going? Yeah, the soundtrack album complete is called The Great Train Robbery, and yet I know it as the first Great Train Robbery. Da-da! What's that about? Victoriana. He would do another movie as well. Let's get onto that music. Let's play that. In 1979 by Bob Clark, Murder by Decree. That is the wonderful Sherlock Holmes meets Jack the Ripper. Oh my God, it's a classic film. It explores Stephen Knight's famous theory that it's the royal surgeon, Sir Henry Gull, that is the Ripper, and the reasons behind it, trying to kill the prostitutes that know all about the illegitimate birth of a royal child, the cover-up. A lot of people still cling to that belief. It has been debunked. There's elements which don't work. I've studied Ripperology pretty much all my life. I've got my own theories, but you're never going to know. That the best thing about Jack the Ripper is that you're never going to find out the absolute truth. Oh yes, but you can open up Scotland Yard's hidden files from the vault. They've done that, and it didn't give them anything. It gave them a lot of more red herrings, a lot of more false trails. But the film is based on that Stephen Knight's The Final Solution, and it's scary. It's quite horrific. You've got David Hemmings in there. You've got Christopher Plummer playing Sherlock Holmes. And you've got James Mason playing Dr. Watson. And you have Donald Sutherland playing Robert Lees. Robert Lees was a psychic, real psychic. He was genuinely around and got involved in the Ripper case during the time in Whitechapel. And he said he had visions. He went to Scotland Yard several times and pleaded with them. I've seen the killings. I know who's doing it. I've seen the guy doing it. And he wouldn't listen to him. And, you know, finally they did, but it didn't really go anywhere. But in the film, again, dressed in Victoriana, top hat, big sideburns, curly grey hair, whiskery beard on him. A bit like he is in the first Great Train Robbery. And Robert Lees, played by Donald Sutherland, produces, the hairs on the back of my neck have just risen, the most haunting moments in a film, which is actually quite frightening and very powerful, very traumatic, very tragic. But when he tells of what he's seen, and he's sitting there and his wife's he's in a big armchair, but those big limpid pools of blue eyes that Donald Sutherland has, they glaze over with genuine fright and horror, like he's seen the end of the world. Because in the street he has seen who he thinks is Jack the Ripper, and he sits there and he tells him and he recounts his visions and what he saw and how he felt, and I know this, and he's a broken shell of a man, and it really, it's so profoundly frightening and haunting. It lingers. It's a brilliant portrayal. It's only a brief sequence really, but he leaves a lasting mark on that movie. And it's wonderful. So, you know, you can put a tin pot on his head, you know, you could give him the look of Oddball, you could put him in a natty early 70s suit and raincoat in Clute, you can dress him in the best suits of the modern day, you know, you can put him in Western gear for Forsaken with his son Kiefer Sutherland, and but the natty Victoriana, the top hats and all that sort of thing, he looks wonderful, and with those sideburns, he loved his hair, you know, he was immaculately groomed in sort of like the 90s onward, well, the 80s onwards. He had very short hair, and if he grew it, it would be nice and regimented. But then obviously other roles, it'd be more raggedy and all that. But in the 70s, he was just fearless abandon. It was everywhere. Pure perm, pure Kevin Keegan perm he had at one stage. But that's a great performance there. Again, albeit brief, in a really fabulous movie as well. All the performances are great, and it's one of those films that gets you angry at the end about the needless death, you know, and you're doing this just to cover up for the royals. Christopher Plummer, not my favourite actor, Christopher Plummer. I think a lot of what he does is very one-note. He is great at what he does, but he doesn't have much range. There'll be people that argue with that, but I've seen a lot of his movies, and I think he's wonderful in those roles, but he doesn't deviate too much. In this, there is, you know, he has a sympathy for the underlings, the down and outs, you know, the dregs of society, the whores of Whitechapel, and the plight of the homeless and all that. And you can see that in it, and he wavers, and his disdain for authority that are going to just like, look, whatever you've learned, you can forget about it. This is going nowhere. We're going to make sure that. So you shut your face, Mr. Holmes. And you got James Mason. Come on, Holmes. Let's go home. I'll get you a pipe and a bit of crack cocaine as well. Cheers, y'all. Oh dear. But yeah, Backdraft as well. I mean, the great Kurt Russell, you know, and he plays the sort of the pyro elector, you know, the fire Hannibal, the fireman. He's an arsonist, but he describes his joy of the flame, of watching things burn, and again, he's haunting, and yet he's charismatic again. It's a sheer brilliance to be able to do that sort of thing. In 2017, he was given an honorary Academy Award. I'm not a fan of the Oscars at all. I think it's, again, a corrupt, totally biased situation. I used to watch it, now I don't bother. I did see when he got it, and I applauded, obviously. But again, you know, it's like the Academy only does that sort of thing, like, oh shit, he deserved an Oscar for Clute, he deserved an Oscar for this, for that, or whatever, for Don't Look Now, and even for Invasion of Body Snatchers. Jesus H. Christ, I haven't even touched upon that yet, have I? But when it's kind of like, God, we should have given it to him a long time ago for those roles, but no, we better do something now. Let's give him an honorary one. I suppose you should look at it like, well, I didn't get it for one specific role, I got it for every role. So this is multiple Oscars all in one little golden boy statue, you know. And definitely worthy. This is still Murder by Decree, by the way. That's like a Murder by Decree, by the way. Let's get back onto... No. Let's go on to Phil Kaufman's Invasion of the Body Snatchers. A second take on Albert Finney. Jack Finney's original novel, The Body Snatchers. It was done in the like 50s, which was a great movie. But the best, it's been several iterations of this story over the decades, and there'll be many more, I'm sure. But the best is the 78 Phil Kaufman, set in New York, and he plays Matthew Bennell. He's a sort of health and safety operator going around restaurants and finding rat droppings. What's this? It's a kipper. It's a rat turd. No, sir, it's a caper. Because him and his friends, again, a little ensemble. You've got Brooke Adams, you've got Veronica Cartwright, who you would see in Alien shortly afterwards as Lambert, and you've got Jeff Goldblum as well, and you've got Leonard Nimoy is in there, and Art Hindle. It's a great movie, and his suspicions about things are not happening. Everyone's odd one day, complaining about someone being even odder, and then the next day they're both fine together. And like, you know the story anyway, but his performance in that, his realization, his fight back, his rage against the takeover, and former friends. You know, I'm going to kill you, he says to Leonard Nimoy, who's his friend, this psychologist, a pop psychologist, a Frasier type psychologist in a way. I said New York, it's San Francisco. What an idiot. It's San Francisco. God. And he makes such a use of San Francisco locations. See, some of you are going like, oh, you said that wrong. It's San Francisco. Yeah, I've corrected myself. So take fingers off keyboard. Damn it. And he's like, I'm gonna kill you, David. He's like, in a minute or two, you won't want to, because they're going to inject him, make him go to sleep. Because when you sleep, that's when the pods take you over. And again, you have a wonderful, traumatic sequence where there's only him and Brooke Adams left, and they find the distribution points to send pods all across, not just America, because they're sending them out in trucks, but they get to the docks and there's ships being loaded with these things, and they're like, we can't fight this, it's over. But we must fight it, and we've got to stay awake. And of course, he goes away to go and investigate, and Brooke Adams clearly falls asleep while he's gone, and he comes back and he's like, he grabs hold of her, and in a great, fantastic, Tom Behrman's effects are wonderful, her face begins to flake and fall apart, and she literally crumbles in his arms. And he, again, like with the daughter in Don't Look Now, he's holding death and his grief and his rage and the howl that he does. Oh, I can't. No, it's in a a pulp horror movie, pulp sci-fi horror movie. It's so unbelievably potent and strong and emotional that you are him. You feel it. Of course, then she turns up, the new pod version of it, and I'm not falling for this, So off he goes to try to destroy everything. And yeah, he does, and he seems to get away. And then they've let him to walk amongst them without showing any emotion, all the pod people. And you see him at his office, and they've got all like experiments going on. They're testing, obviously, rat turds and stuff like for the local takeaways and turdaways. And he gets up and he walks out, and you think, well, he knows how to act amongst all the pod people. He's just going with the flow. And then you see Veronica Cartwright in the distance, and they make eye contact, and she walks toward him, and like she's going, looking around, and she's normal. It's like, Matthew, we've made it and all that. And what you get from Matthew, the curly bonds, the eyes, and the big mouth, and the outstretched finger, and the pod shriek comes out, Matthew now, and she's screaming, oh God. It's brilliant. It's one of the classic moments in sci-fi horror, and he owns it again. But that's what I'm saying, he is able to be humanistic, be funny, be oddball, be goofy, but he owns every character and gives them a genuine three-dimensionality and a realism and humanity which you can warm to. They could be a complete and utter severe bastard, but he will make you interested in them as well. They're not just one note. Even Dromgoole is not one note in Lockup. On paper he is, but with Donald Sutherland's portrayal, there's a lot more to him going on. There's a wry sense of humour. There's a bit of victory and a gloatingness to him. He ain't just your typical villainous bad guy making life hell for our hero. Ordinary people with Timothy Hutton. Oh my god. A family dealing with suicide. And again, heartbreaking. And his portrayal there as the father who does not know what to do, tries to cling the family to him, but in the heart of literally, trauma and why, and the finger pointing, who's to blame for this. The film got an Academy Award, but again, it's an ensemble cast of terrific performances, and he's outstanding in it as well. It's not an easy watch without a doubt, it certainly isn't. But that's what pushes him. Pride and Prejudice, he's friggin' marvellous. Not my kind of movie at all, not my kind of story, but he's great in that. And it's so funny how he can play oddball, and then but he can play an aristocrat. Again, that's not Victorian, is it? That's Edwardian. But he can play that kind of role as well, perfectly well. And he has immaculate grooming. The beard, in later life, that beard was outstanding. I wish I could grow a beard like that. I've just trimmed mine down, and I made a right hash of it as well, because I ended up cutting myself down here. And it's turned in on itself and gone all spiky, and it's like, argh. I love beards, but I'm not good at supporting them. I've got a face that needs a beard, but it seems to rebel against it. Oh dear, folks. Oh, cloud busting. Kate Bush. He's in the video. He's the star of the video. An epic video at that. He's in a bloody Kate Bush video as well. How did that happen? And when was that? Would that be 81, 82? Something like that. Yeah, something like that. And he's got a big role in it, and it's a proper movie video as well. Like, so the guy did a lot. He won many awards, a lot of Emmys, and I think he got a couple of BAFTAs as well. But he got lots of Canadian, French titled honours and degrees given to him for his services to, well, the country, to the industry, to entertainment, to culture. What a guy. Cheers, folks. But again, actually, like Bear Island, he's in, which is Alistair MacLean's Bear Island. I don't think it's a particularly great movie, but I think he's great in it. It's, again, set on like this, is it the Arctic or Antarctic? I can't remember where it is now. It's very frigid and frozen. And there's a U-boat base there, and he's part of a team, a research team. But it's all skullduggery. There's neo-Nazis involved in it, and there's hidden gold. But on that sub, his dad was a U-boat commander. He's working for the US, but his dad was a U-boat commander, and they don't allow him on there, but he gets in anyway and finds the remains of his dad, and he finds these crates of gold, because that's what they're after. And then it's all like, you can't trust him. Smitty, his best mate Smitty, you can't trust Smitty either. So fights and skullduggery takes place. Obviously he wins the day. So again, he can be your leading man and your hero. And also your bit part player, your cameo appearance, which just lends enormous respect and gravitas to a film. As I say, I've not seen The Hunger Games. I don't know how big a role he plays in each particular instalment, but a lot of people do talk about his performances in those movies, so it must be, a fair bit to it to give him that kind of stature with the Hunger Games crowd. But yeah, as I say, the tributes have come in thick and fast from everybody under the sun, it seems. No one had a bad word to say about him. I presume his wife at the time he had an affair with Jane Fonda possibly had a bad word or two to say about it. But life is life and love is love, and the two go hand in hand. Don't know where I'm going to go with that, but he always appeared to have been intelligent, articulate, very outspoken, but still polite about things. He'd say his piece. Apart from the anti-Vietnam stuff, I don't recall him being horribly outspoken like so many stars are these days. And he was, championing people to challenge, society and its laws, its moralistic stances, but in a good way. Think for yourselves, just question things, and you need more people like that. He challenged authority. He challenged, the equilibrium, the status quo of Hollywood. He would take on roles which were awkward, difficult, but stamp his personality upon them. And everyone who worked with him has just been absolutely glowing with praise for him. So, Animal House, Kevin Bacon, I think it's his first movie, and you've got Donald Sutherland there as a drunk professor. He's not in it for much. It's only literally about 5 minutes, if that. But he steals it. He really steals it. And even Kevin Bacon was saying, I only worked with him on that movie, and we'd see each other, later in years. But I worked with him on that, and he blew me away because that's the big star that I knew on that set. Because he was, at that era, he was huge, of course. And he worked with John Landis on Kelly's Heroes. John Landis, who was the scouting agent and the second unit director, and got the idea for American Wealth in London whilst making Kelly's Heroes. And then, obviously, Animal House, and Donald Sutherland comes into that because they must have got on sound at the time. I'm gonna have to finish this, aren't I? It's teasing me now. Look, come on. Like the Tiger Tanks here. This is Kelly's Heroes again. Stop with these negative vibes, man. We strap an extra piece to the barrel, makes the Germans think they're firing 70mm, and we've got special ammo. We fire paint. When we fire it, it makes pretty pictures in the sky, and we play loud music when we go into battle. It scares the shit out of the enemy. I'm misquoting him really badly, I know. He's got a voice that's very hard to emulate. I always try to mimic people, and you may have noticed, and usually with dismal failure, of course, but Donald Sutherland's just got, his voice is so idiosyncratic and so unique. It's very nuanced. It's hard to do. I don't know if it's part of the Canadian in him, I don't know. The Canuck, I don't know. But it's almost like it should be a much louder voice, but it hits his teeth and his lips, and it folds back on itself and kind of wobbles and drops down an octave or two. I don't know. It is such a shame. This guy would have worked until, Judgment Day. He would have churned out many, many more performances, many more movies, many more different roles, even more diverse. He would not stop. He said, I do what I love, and I love what I do. Acting, he said, with acting, you've got to fall in love with it. He said, working with, I forgot to mention, he worked with Bertolucci on 1900 and Fellini on Casanova. Oh my God, he's worked with the greats, the absolute genuine cinematic greats, and he revered them. You and I might not massively be passionate about their movies. I know I certainly am not, but I know how such high regard they're held in. And for him to say, I've worked with these greats, but I do it because I'm in love with what they do. I love what I do, and I love what they're accomplishing, so want to be part of it. You're not going to work. You're constantly in love. So you've got this excitement, this buzz around you whenever you're working on a film set or on stage. There's some great old footage of him on stage. These were like obviously BBC Play of the Week sort of thing, where he's doing Hamlet and stuff like that. And he's good. You know, that face, you know, that without the beard, it's got a long, the exact opposite of what I've got. Mine goes that way. His just goes north and south. Mine goes, you know, pumpkin style. But it didn't matter. He had big silly ears, big long face, and big goofy googly eyes. And yet still is a charismatic leading man, a romantic hero. And you're drawn to him. See, looks don't matter. Looks don't mean a thing. It's what is inside you which comes out, be it voice, be it through your eyes, your mannerisms, the spirit and persona that you exude. And if you can manipulate that and change that, then you're away. You're an actor. Oh dear. I jolted out my chair when Mrs. Kilt-Man said, "Oh my God, Donald Sutherland's died." And I was like, I held my head and I just couldn't believe it. Could not believe it. I still don't want to believe it. I want to be able to talk about new films of his. And this is the really strange thing about these older stars dying. Don't forget, he was 88. These older stars dying. You haven't heard of them for a little bit. But it comes as a massive wallop when you get the news that they've died, because in your mind, they're still making movies. They're still highly alive in your mind. So and you know, I'm not going to name names, but there's going to be others. There's going to be others, and you're going to be in deep, demented shock about it as well. And yet, when you think about it, you shouldn't be. Because certainly these people, these actors and filmmakers, have reached an age where, look, they simply cannot go on. I didn't know that he'd been ill for a long time, it's said. They haven't, from what I've seen, certainly, you know, up to doing this video, I don't know what he died of. We all presume, you know, the obvious things, but it could be many things. A long illness becomes another illness, becomes this, that and the other, and it all takes its toll. But Donald Sutherland is eternal. He is immortal. His films, so many of them, so many diverse characters and roles. You can't forget about them, and they will go on and on and on. Each new generation, you should introduce them to these films. As with everybody, every actor and every genre of movie, introduce your kids, and then hopefully my kids are massively invested in great old Universal and Hammer and Mad Max and John Carpenter movies. They know these movies and 70s movies. They know them, and they've got their own individualized passions for these directors and filmmakers and certain stars, and follow them. And what's wrong with that? Love what you do what you love. Donald Sutherland, there you go. R.I.P. There's a wee bit left there. No longer. Well, folks, Space Cowboys, just remember that one. Another ensemble movie. That's with Clint and Tommy Lee Jones and others. And again, he shines in that. He can absorb the personalities around him and be part of the ensemble, but also his own character. Don't be the grey man. Don't blend into the background. He didn't do that right from the word go. He did not do that. He became something. So, if you can be anything in life, be a Donald Sutherland. The guy is king, the guy rocks. He is absolutely awesome. And he will live forever. So, away with them negative waves, man, you know? I can't wait, I'm not gonna do any more because I'm gonna mangle every quote from him. I know them off by heart, but now doing it, it's not gonna work. Folks, I have been always shall be Kilt-Man. Please, in the meantime, in this ever, let's not lose any more, but we know we're going to. In between time, please keep it kilted, keep it Celtic, and I'm going to see you all. Sorry, I've got to be careful. I have an old wound under this arm. Well, I've got one under both arms actually, but a stab wound, and for some reason, even years and years later, I still reopen it, and I don't know how. I asked about this. I said, why is it not just like proper scar tissue and just healed over? He said, well, sometimes it doesn't happen like that. Sometimes the wound is in. Don't worry, you're not infected. Just make sure if it does open again, keep it clean. Well, it opened again, and it's not like it's not like a Tom Savini gore effect. It's just sore, and certain stretching and like and it's kind of gone angry again as well. Like that can't be good. Doctors out there, please comment below. Let me know what's gone wrong there. Anyway, please give your respects to the great Donald Sutherland and watch his movies. There's hundreds of them, and they're wonderful. They're all great. Well, they're great because he's in them. Some of them might not be great movies, but they're great because he's there. Let's leave it at that. I'm away.